blogger from Dexter, Maine, who once earned a George Mitchell scholarship. From the Maine Wire, editor-in-chief, Steve Robinson!
Welcome to the Maine Republican gubernatorial debate. Thank you to our debate hosts this evening, the Maine Policy Institute and Maine Civic Action. Thank you to the Maine Wire team for offering comprehensive live stream coverage of tonight's debate. I'm your moderator, Steve Robinson. Candidates, we've explained the rules to you in advance, but for the benefit of those watching here at the Cross Center and at home, all candidates will have 90 seconds to offer responses to questions. The time will be displayed on this clock, and the limits will be enforced by this bell. Candidates will have 30 to 60 seconds to respond if they are attacked by another candidate at my discretion. We will end with closing statements of 2 minutes. The order of responses and positions on the stage has been determined by a random drawing that we did later. The men on the stage were not given the questions in advance of this debate. Candidates, we will now begin with a question directed specifically at one candidate, and only that candidate will respond. But before we do any of that, we're going to have the national anthem.
Yeah. All right.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much for Brian Netto, our trumpist, and Rick Tyler for introducing the candidates. This is why we have teams doing this. We begin, as I said, with questions for each candidate, and only that candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. Robert Wessels, we begin with you. Robert, I don't know anyone who doesn't like you, except for maybe a couple of these guys on the stage. But you've refused to raise money, and you've said that you don't think that you need that to win a gubernatorial election. My question is, if Republicans choose to nominate you, a candidate who doesn't have the resources to win a modern election and doesn't think that he needs to, won't we just be handing the election to the Democratic candidate, a well-funded Democratic machine? And if you don't have the resources to win in a general election, is your heart really in it?
So absolutely not. We would not be handing the election over to the Democratic machine because I believe that we as Republicans will pull together and we will all unite behind myself as a primary candidate. And I would say that my results so far have spoken for themselves, as I am right there in the thick of things with those who have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. I, for one, have spent, everybody can see this, it's public, I've spent $24,000, and I'm polling right in the middle with everybody who has raised hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And so I believe that Maine needs a governor that is highly effective with a less amount of money, and I am proving myself I'm proving that I can do that effectively. We were the first one on the ballot by far with a 100% volunteer team. So I believe that I am the candidate of choice and that I absolutely can win this primary and that we as a Republican Party can win the general election with me there.
Thank you, Robert. Libby. The candidates on the stage, you're the only one who has opted to take taxpayer money to support your campaign through the Maine Clean Elections Act. How can you advocate for fiscal conservatism when taxpayers are funding your campaign? And would you pledge to repeal taxpayer-funded political campaigns as governor?
Well, thank you for the question. I appreciate it, and thanks to the audience for coming. I'm looking at the audience. I'm actually not usually pointing at people, but I kind of want to make this gesture right here because I'm going to be reporting to you. And if you don't think that special interest money has damaged the way that government operates and has damaged your life as a result, I would like to and be happy to invite you to come up to the legislature and watch the process roll out. The problems that we have aren't always created by government influence, but does anybody here think that the lobbyists are actually sitting in the Senate chamber where I work for no reason at all? They're there to influence the process. It's called rent seeking, right? And rent seeking is just, we're trying to set things up so that the law really favors us. That's the way it's been going for a long time, and people in Maine have told me that they're sick of it. The only 2 times that I've worked on with clean elections is the first time I ran for governor in 2002, and now. I've never run as a clean elections candidate, always a traditional candidate as a legislator, and I've been a senator 4 times, and I've been a representative twice. Why is that? Well, if you're in the legislature and you're legislative leadership, you can raise money through PACs while everybody else, rank and file, is raising money through clean elections. And I would say, no, I don't want that.
Thank you. Ben Midgley, you have never held elected office, never served on a town board, never run a government agency. You describe the governorship as an executive role, but a governor can't fire the legislature, even if Governor LePage tried once. You can't fire judges. You can't restructure departments the way a CEO restructures a company. What specifically have you done that prepares you to work with or against a Democrat-controlled legislature or a Republican-controlled legislature that has no obligation to do what you say?
Okay, first let me just say that not having political experience is fairly common. 20% of all governors elected historically have no political experience. Ronald Reagan, for example, never had experience before he was elected governor. Donald Trump, no political experience, but I do have significant executive experience. And one of the things I've focused on in my entire career that's made me really one of the most successful operators in the industry that I work in is my ability to work with people, listen to people. Sometimes you have to get there through compromise, which obviously is not the approach we're going to take initially because there are so many things wrong the Democrats have put in place. Sometimes you have to get there just by showing the authenticity and that you're going to listen to people. Sometimes you have to be consistent enough to hear the ideas from the other side, even though you don't take them, but to get people to come over to your side because they show your intentions are true. Negotiation-wise, I've worked with large private financial institutions for the majority of my career. Tremendous amount of work, I'd say, with high-level lawyers, with unscrupulous characters in the corporate world that I've had to deal with before. But in any case, it can be very effective in getting us from point A to point B. Also, when you're from outside of the political world, you don't really look so much at the process as you look at the problem, and you go to fix the problem. If you can't get it this way, you're going to go this way. If you can't get it this way, you're going to go that way. My time's up, so I'll leave it at that.
David Jones, you ran for governor once before. You ended up dropping out. Your most recent political experience has been running PACs for President Donald Trump and some talk radio with my friend Ray Richardson. Why should Republican voters trust that your campaign is anything more than a fun project run by a baby boomer who got bored?
Say that again.
Why should Republican voters trust that your campaign is anything more than a wealthy baby boomer who got bored?
Well, that's great. If I knew a wealthy baby boomer that was on my campaign, I could answer that. You know, I'm a guy that started from scratch. I'm the guy that, you know, when I got out of high school, started my own company. I was 17 years old. I've never applied for a job. This is my first job interview. I ran a company. It was a great company. I took it from me and a couple of guys to 1,100 people. I know what it's like to get things done, sign the front of the check. And my campaign is ran. I've got the most diverse group of people surrounding me. It's amazing the folks that we have. And, you know, I look at this and I say, I'm really proud that I have the people with me that I have, because we know Maine. I've been involved in Maine politics for over 30 years. I've been, listen, my ear to the ground. 20 years I've been doing a radio show. I've interviewed presidents, vice presidents, senators, congressmen. I've been with President Trump. I was chosen by President Trump to be on the Republican National Platform Committee. This isn't my first go-around, but I am a true conservative. I am the only Trump guy in the race, and make no mistake about it. I've been with him since day one. The PAC that I started was called Making Maine Great Again. Fantastic PAC. We came 22,000 votes away from turning the state of Maine red. That's a record I'll hang my hat on. We can do this. We can do it again. The only way we're going to do it is work together. But believe me, you elect David Jones as your next governor, you got what you've been looking for. Thank you.
Owen McCarthy, everybody I've talked to really likes you, but everybody has some version of the same opinion. You'd make a great state senator. Maybe you'd be a great commissioner for the Department of Economic Development. You're too nice for the blood sport that is politics. So the question is, are you ready for prime time? Are you ready for a general election fight? Or would Republicans be nominating a punching bag for the Democratic machine?
Well, first of all, who's ready to win in 2026? If you look up Owen online and what it means warrior. And while I might seem nice and I might seem kind, I have fought for everything that I've ever gotten. I grew up in a trailer in Patton, Maine, the son of a third-generation logger. I built my own way. I went to college on the pulp and paper scholarship as the first of my family to do that. I went on to become an entrepreneur in medical devices, which if you think if that's not a blood sport, there's 7 different types of lawyers you have to hire to get through the Medicare code and the FDA process. I have done all of that while keeping a good attitude, but I always take the hill. And that's what I would do as the governor. And that's what we need to do in 2026 to win this election and to change this state around. I'm also the guy with a plan. I have Maine 2040. It's got 130 policies, 72 pages, because when we win, we need to go fast. And in it, we are betting on opportunity, affordability, and discipline in how we run our government. It creates 50,000 foundational jobs. And I think, for me, that is what primetime looks like, and I'm ready to rock, Steve.
Thank you very much. Bobby Charles, you grew up in Maine, but you've spent most of your life working and living in Washington, D.C., at the White House, on Capitol Hill for the State Department. You continue to run a D.C.-based consulting firm, and your critics have labeled you a carpetbagger from away. When did you begin living full-time in Maine? Will you return to D.C. if you lose the primary or general elections? And how do you respond to critics who say that you're just a D.C. insider?
Well, thank you, Steve. I grew up in this state, and I would argue that the values that you get that matter most are the ones that you are grown up with. And I was grown up by a school teacher in a town of 500. I was working full-time at 12. I was building houses with World War II vets at 17, another big influence. And then I went away to serve my country, and I served for 10 years in naval intelligence. I was invited to serve in the Reagan White House. I would never trade those years for anything. I love this state, and I'm back. I've been in this state just about every year of my life, unless I was in Iraq or Afghanistan or for some other reason not here. But the reality is I am totally dedicated to this state. And I voted for Ronald Reagan in 80 and in 84 here. And then And then I came back here finally after I bought my house in '05. Bottom line is I am all about the idea that you go where you're needed. I came back here, I never expected to run for governor, never thought of it. And at the end of the day, I looked around and I thought, oh my God, the state I came back to is not the state that I left. And I realized I've got the tools. I've managed billions of dollars. I have been a crime fighter all my life. And I fought fraud as a federal investigator and litigator. And what does this state need? It needs someone who will fight fraud, as you well know. It needs counter narcotics, and it needs a manager. And I've done that.
Jonathan Bush, in 2016, you donated to Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson. In 2023, you donated to Nikki Haley. Both of those donations can be seen as a rebuke to President Donald Trump, who you've been outspoken towards at times. Where do you stand now on President Trump, and do you think that the Maine Republican Party should be represented by someone who isn't fully aligned with the commander-in-chief who earned 77.3 million votes in 2024?
I've had a couple of choice things to say about Donald Trump, and I don't think anybody in this room hasn't sat in front of their TV and say, what did he just say? But the fact is, Donald Trump was right on protecting our borders. Donald Trump was right on protecting fairness and getting the woke out of our schools and our law enforcement infrastructure. And I stand converted on those things. I think the next person who's going to win in Maine has to be careful not to be overly attached to Donald Trump, because that will cost us the general election. And so the fact that I'm a convert on the policies that have made Donald Trump effective and still have chosen other Republicans in other primaries over the years, I think it's the perfect combination to win this general election.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Garrett Mason, you have pitched yourself as the Augusta insider that Maine Republicans need to reverse 8 years of progressive policies implemented under Governor Janet Mills. You've developed that insider knowledge in part as a state house lobbyist. Are there any policies you promoted as a lobbyist that you would not support as governor? And can you guarantee the people here tonight that former clients of your public affairs business won't receive preferable treatment from a Governor Mason?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks, Steve, for having us here tonight. And I want to say thank you to the Maine Policy Institute for hosting this event. You know, as somebody who did run for governor before and can tell you that we usually had these type of debates in high school gyms and various other places like that. And so this is definitely an upgrade. So very well done. You know, I did serve 8 years in the state legislature, and I also served, I've worked the past 8 years with my own public relations firm. And we have clients like the Maine Farm Bureau, where we advocate for lower healthcare costs through things like Farm Bureau health plans. We also do things like advocate for Associated Builders and Contractors, another client of ours, where we fight against right-to-work things. So when you're elected governor, the person that you're lobbying for is for the state of Maine, and I've always taken that responsibility very seriously, whether that be as a state senator or a county commissioner. I've always advocated for the Maine taxpayer, and I'll continue to do that as governor.
Thank you, Garrett. Now we'll move on to more general questions for all of the candidates, and we'll swing back the other way. So coming right back to you, Garrett. The first question is from an informal poll that we conducted yesterday of Robinson Report subscribers. The number one subject our readers wanted discussed at this debate by far was corruption. From no-bid contracts and Medicaid fraud to green energy boondoggles, Mainers have watched their taxes go up while NGOs, special interests, and Democrat cronies get rich. As governor, what specific steps would you take in your first year to root out fraud and corruption in state government? And what will you do to make state government more transparent?
Well, there is absolutely no question that fraud and corruption is out of control in Augusta, and it's largely due to the things that you just said. No bid contracts, wild social welfare programs that are being abused every single day. You know, when I was first elected in 2010, one of the things that was going on at that time was EBT fraud. We were finding out that people were selling their EBT cards at pawn shops, and that There was just the fraud and waste and abuse in that program specifically was out of control. And so what did we do? When we got into office, we addressed those issues. We put a 60-month cap on benefits for an entire family. We tightened eligibility requirements for people on these programs. We put pictures on EBT cards to make sure that you couldn't sell them in pawn shops. But the fact of the matter is, fraud will always find a way. And you have to be ever vigilant about rooting out fraud, corruption, waste, abuse in the system. The fraud, the EBT card abuse of yesterday, today has now morphed into daycare centers and home hospice centers and medical device companies, all of the things that you have done such a great job uncovering. So what do we have to do? We have to have a governor who can go in right away and do what we did in 2011, adapt to the situation where we're at, unveil the corruption and make sure that it doesn't happen again, and keep going, because you cannot stop. Fraud will always find a way.
Thank you, Garrett. Jonathan Bush. What would Governor Bush do to crack down on fraud and corruption in Augusta?
Oh boy, glad you asked. First of all, thank you for your unrelenting attention to surface this kind of stuff. You guys have done a phenomenal job. And fraudsters like our current system, but our current system loves wasters. And this system's problem, for every dollar we've found that we will find in fraud, there's $10 in waste, because our healthcare infrastructure gets run like the Soviet Union. You get a contract with the commissars in Augusta, you can do bad home delivery care, bad transportation care, bad autism care for a decade and never get cut off. There's no authority to fire people who aren't effective, even if they're not breaking the law. It's legal to stink. That's incredible. The solution is not to go and audit and do whack-a-mole with each one. Of course, we enforce our laws. Fellas, thanks for coming tonight. We should free you up to enforce our laws better than we have. Sorry about that. But the thing to do is a bold restructuring of the way we do this. Get Augusta out of the healthcare delivery business. Get Augusta out of the Medicaid delivery business. Prune it back like an invasive species, like the knotweed that it is. Delegate responsibility to our doctors and our clinics. Let them adjudicate what ride services are needed, what extra help, home visit, groceries. Maybe Uber's good enough, or a local taxi. That's the change that we need.
Bobby Charles, the same question to you.
So as a former federal investigator and litigator, first of all, I think fraud and transparency are two sides of the same coin. I would open the books up immediately, and then I would impose zero-based budgeting here to get clarity on, frankly, fiscal responsibility. I would impose performance metrics. I would initiate an immediate statewide hiring freeze to stop the runaway hiring. I would shrink DHHS and education, restructuring them. I would put an IG in every single department. I would hire 60 new investigators. I would put an master teacher at education, not an administrator. I would create a clawback office in which you could drag that money back, including out of the Lewiston Shooting Fund, where they gave $2 million to 29 different nonprofits that were all their own people. I would put a conservative at the top of financial and management services. I would also put one at the top of the Bureau of Budget and at the top of public safety. I would require able-bodied Mainers to go work if they're between 18 and 65. I would get all the illegal aliens out of this state. I would use the line item veto as a governor, with or without the legislature, and I pray we get it, to knock it down. I would stop runaway sole source contracts, and I would investigate the living daylights out of Mills, Fry, Bellows, and Pingree.
Owen McCarthy, the steps you would take to crack down on corruption and fraud in Augusta.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. It reminds me, I have an Uncle Thump, and Uncle Thump always used to say, if you ever see a rotting log, you got to check the whole pile. And so we need to audit absolutely everything, because that log is very rotted, and I'm sure it's spread through it all over. In my plan, that's the main performance review. So we're going to do that. Two is, I don't know why people haven't been prosecuted and people haven't gone to jail for the fraud that's happened, and that needs to happen. if there's no consequences in our society, anyone is going to step up. Many people are going to step up and go there. 3 is we're going to equip the people that work at the state with the same tools that the Maine Wire uses. These guys over here have a couple of people that use AI tools to go drill into thousands and thousands and millions of documents and unearth things every single day. We have those tools, and we can also use those tools, and we have more data. But we're also going to make sure, and this will save for a budget, Steve, we're going to take and put everything, the budget online, transparent, in real time, so you guys can see where your hard-earned taxpayer dollars are being spent. So,
David Jones, how would you crack down on corruption and fraud?
Are you done?
I'm good. Okay.
With an applause line that good, you got to.
Yeah, I'm going to stop. Yeah. Steve's protecting me from myself.
Well done, Owen.
David Jones.
All right. Well, look, unlike anybody else up here on this stage, I've spent many a night in front of town councils raising these issues. I've worked with Amy Sussman. I've sat down with her. I sat down with the U.S. Attorney, Andrew Benson, and discussed this problem. You know, the idea that $1.9 million of the shooting fund has gone to 29 different NGOs is absolutely absurd. I've talked to the shooting victims, as have you. I mean, it's a shame what's happened. There's people who are still hurting today, people who still have to get surgeries done. They've lost control of their arms. I'm telling you, it's pathetic. Now, I got drawn into this because of the Ayman Osman problem. They elected a guy who got picked up by ICE yesterday, and thank God he's out of here. No, we brought that to light. I was there, and as was the Maine Wire, and we talked with several of the people there. And I'll tell you, this is a horrible situation. We have to get down to brass tacks. These people need to be prosecuted. The idea that law enforcement is told to stand down, it's sickening. It can't go on any longer. I promise you, on day one, I will give law enforcement the green light to make sure that the Maine Constitution and the rule of law is enforced in as grand a way as possible. The Chinese grows have to stop. We've got a problem here in Maine, and we don't address it. No one ever is prosecuted for these crimes.
Thank you, David. I won't be doing any Candy Crowley style fact checks tonight, but Ayman Osman wasn't picked up by ICE. You'll learn about that later this week at the Maine Wire. It's a lot worse than ICE.
No.
Ben Midgley, what would you do to tackle corruption and fraud in Augusta?
Okay, so I'm going to give a couple broad answers, then a specific answer on how you stop the money from getting out the door. So fraud management in the corporate world is standard operating procedure, but you can also, as governor, stop bad legislation that's coming through and use executive orders to, stymie up things that need to be stopped. From a process standpoint, if you look at the amount of money going out of DHHS, which is a $4.3 billion department, okay, that's the majority of your tax money. All you have to do within that is, one, for any money that's going out the door, you create exception reports. So anything that doesn't have the proper paperwork, the proper payment boundaries, or the documentation that's required, an exception is generated, goes onto a report. Then you have multi-level alerts. So that exception report goes right up to the commissioner of DAFs, above the manager of that department, so they can't stop everyone from seeing it, all the way to the governor's desk, and you could manage the trend on exceptions through that process. Then you don't allow any payments until all those exceptions are cleared. If there is exceptions that have made it through and they're getting paid, you send the fraud department on it, because you might have a small percentage of that. We got 24 people in the department. You can increase that number. And then when you prosecute, you got to make sure you can't get held up on appeal for 3 years, which is one of the issues we have right now, because these cases can run on and on and on. So you got to get that stopped. You got to have audits for current payments and past payments on a regular basis. At the national level, they do this. You have incentives for whistleblowers in the state government for calling out fraudsters, get a culture of accountability going, and then put transparency out there to the people in Maine. Tell them what you're doing, show them what you're capturing, and then fraud becomes no more.
Jim Libby, corruption and fraud in Augusta.
There's so much corruption and fraud in Augusta and in government that I should be given double the time, because I'm working with it right now, and it drives me nuts. Here's the problem that we have. We have a state auditor that wasn't actually an auditing professional, but the state auditor is a decent person, and he came out with an audit, and we found out where some of the irregularities were. Now, if you were in another state, you'd have had an attorney general go right after that. Did our attorney general go after that? No. Why? Because the attorney general in Maine is chosen in a back room by legislative leadership and by the majority party. We're the only state that does it that way. So we need, if we can't change that, I'm going to ask for a constitutional amendment, but if we can't, thank you, a constitutional amendment, we have to ask for it. But if we can't change that immediately, we're going to set up a very much larger operation that is a government oversight committee. We have a member right here today who's a senator in this audience, and he is a member of the government oversight committee. And the Democrats, not to complain about the left, but they have made that oversight committee meek. They can't get the information they need. They can't go after it. What else are we doing? Well, can you imagine this? We're leaving thousands of positions unfilled, and then we're reaching in there and spending the money on something that's unauthorized. These are the kinds of things that we're doing. We've got to stop it. Yes, I love the sound.
Robert Wessels, you know the question.
Absolutely. So number one, I will bring the want to, right? You cannot convince me at all that Janet Mills has not had the chance to go after the illegal marijuana grows. That how many years has it been, Steve? Right? The reality is she has no desire to go after the illegal marijuana grows. And so that's because of the corruption. So on day one, we're absolutely going after those grows. Number two, also on day one, we're going to set up a DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. I know, Elon Musk took my name, but I said that from the beginning when I started campaigning 2.5 years ago. We need a group of constitutionally minded business people who get together. It's a temporary, I hate bureaucracy, so this is only for a few years, and then we can disband it. But they have to go after the regulations that are killing us. They have to go after the fraud and find that so we can go after it. So this group will find that fraud and will go after it. Also, I think that we need to make it really hard for our government to fund nonprofits. And so that needs to be a senior management level in my administration.
Pretty good.
So you have to be a senior management to be able to make a decision to fund a nonprofit. And lastly, and most importantly, as I've had hundreds of conversations, we have to change the culture within our state government. There's a culture of retaliation. There's not any openness. And on day one, they will need to sign an agreement, a commitment to be open and be honest.
Thank you, Robert. Whether it's drug trafficking organizations selling fentanyl, Chinese cartels growing illicit cannabis, Medicaid fraud rings, or scammers targeting our elderly, Maine is under assault by sophisticated organized crime networks, almost all of them with ties to transnational organized crime. What will you do as governor to protect Mainers from organized crime? And why are you the best candidate to stop criminal groups from taking advantage of Mainers? And also, what role do you think the sheriffs play in fighting organized crime in this state? I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that there's half a dozen of them from across the state here tonight, so you're under a microscope. We'll go in a random order here. Jonathan, you're first.
Oh, great. Okay, guys, ready? We need to enforce our laws. Not pick and choose based on the righteous and the social justice and the environmental and the homeless consideration. Nope. Enforce all the laws we have all the time with everyone relentlessly. That means, bring it. That means we get a common record management system that sheriffs can subscribe to so guys don't spend their entire shift processing an arrest. We get rid of the excuses for the jails to accept people, get rid of the $60 problem where everybody, no matter how many arrests, ends up getting streeted right after the fact. Get rid of the medical center excuse, get nurses so that we can actually get people the 3 hots in a cot that they deserve and need to maybe get a restart going. Now, I've built infrastructure at a large scale. We have a $4 billion healthcare system in this state. Athena managed $30 billion of collections across 116,000 doctors, and we knew where every penny was at every moment. Our law enforcement community deserves that at the micro level so that we can roll up and be able to handle these more sophisticated things that grow up in an environment where our law enforcement are tied at the hands, both culturally, where we don't respect them, and infrastructure-wise, where we don't give them the information they need. I've done it, and I don't think you can do it with experience as a lobbyist. I think you have to actually be a CEO to do that.
Bobby Charles, your plan to protect Mainers from organized crime.
So this time, Steve, I really mean thank you. I have done this for 30 years. I have fought organized crime. For 10 years as a Navy intelligence officer, going after counter-narcotics, counterterrorism, and these TCOs, we call them, all over the United States. As the Assistant Secretary of State, I helped bring down the Cali cartel. I helped bring down major traffickers. I trained law enforcement. I actually set up all the police training in Iraq and in Afghanistan and in Kosovo, and frankly brought down a lot of the traffickers in Colombia, Bolivia, Peru, and Mexico. We're at a moment of enormous peril in the state of Maine right now because we have all the worst trafficking groups here. It's not just the Chinese triads, and God bless you for outing them, but we have the Dominican Trinitarios here. We have the Sinaloa cartel here. We have the Crips. We have the Bloods, we have the gangster disciples, we have the Latin Kings. I have spent my life fighting this fight, and very effectively, by the way. In fact, part of my company's business was to do all of the strategic planning around the United States for all counter-narcotics for the National Guard and develop the algorithms to find them. The bottom line is we need to do three things, really simple, three things. Authorize law enforcement to do what they have the power to do. Number two, fund them properly. And number three, stop this sanctuary state insanity so that state, local, and feds can work together.
Jim Libby, what will you do to protect Mainers from organized crime?
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting here reflecting on it, and I had to think to myself, that's going to be a pretty hard question when it's government that's organizing the crime. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, there's not only that no bid contracts, but there's bid rigging. I could talk about that forever, and you need to learn about that. Thank you very much. Did you know, for example, that in the last session that I served, we tripled the amount of cocaine that you can have on your kitchen table without getting a serious crime? That's the kind of leadership that we have now. We have to stop that from happening. We're decriminalizing drug use. And on top of that, we're normalizing it. We've got, on every street corner in my district, it seems like somebody is selling cannabis. Am I right? We don't need to run it like that. First of all, think about that. If you're going to have something on every street corner, the price is going to go down. They're going to go bankrupt. Well, that's not such a bad thing, I guess. But that's poorly run government right there. So I've worked with Sheriff Lancaster, and let me tell you something about that man. He is working for you, and he's out there busting up these illegal Chinese grows. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is right now, before my bell rings, no Chinese national is going to be able to buy any property in this state if I'm governor.
David Jones, your plan to confront organized crime in Maine.
Well, why don't we start by hiring an attorney general that's going to do his job?
Amen.
How disgusting is it that this man stands there and refuses to prosecute? You know, when Garrett was in office back with Paul LePage, Gateway was an issue. It never got solved. Janet Mills refused to help. She refused to let Paul LePage hire attorneys to prosecute these people. This crime has been going on for a very long time. So we got to let law enforcement, and I'm a big advocate of the Sheriff's Department. Barry DeLong was a very close friend of mine. He filled me in on all the ills and problems that the Sheriff's Departments run into, especially with funding. We have, your clock stopped. We have to fix this. We have to make sure that the county sheriffs are funded and that everything that they're supposed to do, they're allowed to do. Law enforcement needs to be given a green light. And if we don't do it now, When is it going to do it? I'm not a fearmonger. I'm not a race baiter. I'm not a guy who wants to get everybody in this room scared. But I will tell you, we have a problem. And unless law enforcement can do their job, and they absolutely want to do their job, I know it. I've been to 8 of the correction centers in Maine. Then we will always, it'll only get worse. Thank you.
Garrett Mason, your plan to confront organized crime in Maine.
So do I get 2 minutes? David said my name. I'd like to
We had a
clear things
malfunction
up.
with the timer.
Okay.
I feel like you need the advantage. Go ahead.
I guess one of the things, yeah, thank you. I guess one of the things that I'd like to say is like that was absolutely the case, and this is where somebody with government experience comes into play. Right now in the state of Maine, we have a Democrat Attorney General, and of the 8 prosecutorial districts, we have 7 Democrats and 1 Republican, and it happens to be Neil McLean, who is the district attorney in my county. We have 1 person that is going to willfully prosecute these people. So the first thing we have to do in order to do things like that is we have to make sure that we actually have prosecutors who are elected by the people, who are Republicans, who will actually go after this. That's why we have to elect a legislature, by the way. Incredibly important. But on to the basis of your question, when I was in the legislature, one of my first committee assignments was a Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. And while I was on that committee, I got the opportunity to work with people like Bill Diamond and others where we've confronted things like this. We have incredible tools at our disposal. But the first thing we have to do is we have to make sure that our law enforcement understands that we have their back. Right now, we have 350 positions statewide that are unfilled in law enforcement. And the reason for that is because they don't feel like they're going to be protected if something goes wrong. We have to make sure we're standing up for law enforcement. That is very important. The other thing that we have to be able to do is we have to shut off the funding for these Chinese criminal cartels. And that means going after the banks that are funding their mortgages for their Chinese grow houses. That is incredibly important as well. But we have to make sure that law enforcement knows we have their back. We have to give them the materials that they need. And we also have to make sure that jails are able to house these people when it comes time. The Mills administration has not funded county jails for many, many years, and people are getting let out on bail, no bail, back into the streets. It's very important that we fund our jails to house these criminals.
Thank you, Garrett. And Midgley, your plan to confront organized crime in Maine.
Okay, so Maine is still in the top 10 of drug overdoses and drug deaths nationally. It's a number that, or a list that you should not be on. Sonia and I both lost our nephew to a drug overdose, like I'm sure many of you have, or people that you know, and that should not be happening. That's basically policy driven in the state is why that's happening. It's being allowed to happen. So day one executive order on my desk, end Maine sanctuary city policies, that has to happen. Allow cooperation with all federal authorities. State needs to back law enforcement 100%. In regard to the sheriff's department, these are elected officials. They need a voice at the table in regards to all policies, all funding, and then you have better integration with state police, local police, but there has to be more voice in there from our sheriff's department. No more garbage legislation that's going to create more soft on crime policies. You got to stop that. You have to, of course, eliminate Chinese marijuana. Everyone I talked to in law enforcement said that could be stopped almost immediately, given the right support. And those drug gangs that were mentioned, those are the worst in the world. They bring the majority of all drugs into the country, and they shouldn't be in Maine. When I was growing up, you didn't have that. That has been allowed. Back when COVID started, Janet Mills gave the stand down to the Maine Drug Enforcement Agency, and of course, A.G. Fry is not prosecuting anywhere near what he should be prosecuting from that standpoint. You've got to change out the Supreme Court judges. You've got almost all those judges coming up in the next term. So you got to get that done. You can change judges out down the line so we start getting people that are actually charging. Most of the DAs, except for the one that was mentioned, all... Okay, thank you.
Owen McCarthy, your plan to tackle organized crime in Maine.
Well, we got to look at supply and demand. And on the supply side, how about we cooperate with the federal government to make sure we're working together to tackle this problem? How about we lobby the Trump administration to be a high-intensity drug trafficking area expanded throughout additional regions of the state of Maine? We should. How about we fund their justice system at the same level as our neighbors? If you look at the data in New Hampshire, they've doubled or tripled their funding for law enforcement, while we've stayed largely flat. If you look at the budget, that is unacceptable in the last 5 or 6 years, and we need to do that. We need to invest in police recruitment and retention, and then we need to make sure as we arrest people, we have public defenders, and we fix the public defender's office, and we need to eliminate cashless bail so it's not a carousel where people are coming in and out. On the demand side, I had a friend, best friend from high school, that got into drugs right after high school and was addicted most of his adult life. The normal path that the current administration would send this person down would be to hand them out more needles. But instead, this man is now recovered because he went through the Arise faith-based recovery program. And we need to stop handing out needles and getting more people into programs like that if we want to save them.
Robert Wessels, organized crime. Go.
First off, I want to say thank you to the gentleman in the front row. Thank you for fighting for us. And the reality is your hands have been tied by the legislature, by this administration, and you continue to fight. You continue to do that. And my hat's off to you. I had the honor and joy of riding with the Lewiston Police for a ride day. And it was great to see it from the front row, to see what they see every single day, to see how they're doing their job. They're fighting. They're trying to keep our streets safe. And then 2 days later, the people are out, right? So our regulations, we have to deregulate. We have some pretty absolutely stupid laws on the books that are making it easier and easier for people to do illegal things and not get in trouble for it. We need law and order, we need accountability, and we need it consistently across the board. We need to stop the sanctuary state. We've seen this increase in this rise in crime correlates extremely well with the rise in illegal immigrants. And we have to hold them accountable. We need to invite and encourage and make our federal government come in and handle that. And my administration will. We have to hold our judiciary accountable. Again, we have openings that are going to be coming in the next 8 years, and we need to do that. But we have to make the right decisions and hold them accountable.
Thank you, Robert. One more question, and then a brief intermission. The topic of this question is education. Over the last 8 years, Maine's public schools have seen student test scores drop sharply. At the same time, the schools have stridently embraced gender ideology, critical race theory, and other progressive fads. How would you change state education policy to improve student outcomes? And what realistically can a governor do, given that many of the pernicious ideologies afflicting Maine schools are driven by local activists? Ben Midgley, we start with you.
Okay, so if you really want to look at it, the school system is a $4 billion Department of Education. It's the second largest budget item in the state. So the majority of all state spending actually is just between DHHS and the Department of Education. That's 80% of your budget right there. So you've got this huge bureaucracy. If you've got to change the bureaucracy, you have to look at how it was built. So obviously you're going to change the Commissioner of Education when you come in. That's a must. Thank you. The State Board of Education has to be completely reworked. So we're getting the right information down, or you could dissolve it if you had to, but that'd be a larger topic of conversation. And then there's something called the Maine School Management Association that works with our Maine Superintendents Association and the Maine School Board Association, and they work with Drummond Wilson. And that's where they get that's where they get a lot of the worst advice. So you've got to go in there and put a wedge between the Maine School Management Association and our schools. A couple other things you can do is you can start to conditionalize the money. You've got a 55% revenue share of your tax dollars going to the schools, which, by the way, was supposed to lower your property taxes by 15%, and that didn't happen. And then you've got to have a day one executive order from an education standpoint to get back to basics. I'm definitely going to sign that. You've got to support vocational and trade schools more. I know it's a little off the subject, but we got to make sure we get people into those trades. You've got to get ideology out of the schools one way or another. And there shouldn't be any politics in schools. Bottom line, kids need to read and write so they can get a better education and stay in Maine.
Garrett Mason, to you.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm most proud of during my legislative tenure is I was able to champion and pass the only piece of school choice legislation that has been passed in the past 50 years in Maine. That was the Maine Charter School Bill. And I'm proud that there are 9 fully functioning public charter schools in Maine. I believe in school choice. I think it's a big piece of the problem, and I think we need more of it. That being said, there's going to be a lot of talk, I'm sure, about reforming the Department of Education, and that's very important. We need a new commissioner who understands that everything that's being pushed into our schools is being pushed from the top. It's easy to get rid of the woke websites on the DOE. It's easy to get rid of all of the pushed curriculum that they're doing. Our founders were very intelligent. They designed a system here in Maine to make sure that school control was local. Our local school boards have an incredible amount of power at their discretion. The problem is that for the past 50 years, Democrats have said that they don't have any power, and they have to rubber stamp whatever the administrator does and says that they have to do. That is not true. And it's organizations like Maine Policy Institute who have developed things like the Maine Education Initiative that is teaching school boards their power. They're saying no to Janet Mills' interpretation of Title IX. They're saying no to woke curriculum in school. And this organization is teaching them how to do it. And when I'm governor, we will make sure that we have an office of the school board liaison to teach schools how to do this.
Owen McCarthy, how would you improve student outcomes?
So if you read my plan, Maine 2040, the chart right here shows spending going like this and results going like this. Isn't that a strategy problem, everybody? What I want to be known for as governor for my first term for education is I want to be the reading governor. 1 in 4 fourth graders in this state can read at grade level right now. 1 in 4, which is, and if you can't read, you can't learn. And if you can't learn, you can't go into any profession, you can't be a good citizen. And we need to go right at that. The beauty of the United States of America is other places have solved this problem. Mississippi has gone from 49th to 9th in the country in their reading scores. First, if you adjust for socioeconomic status. And they passed a few things that we can do day one. One is they passed a science of reading law. A science of reading law says, and it's going to be very common sense to this audience, but it says, the teachers can pick the curriculum they want. However, they must pick evidence-based, proven curriculum. It's convenient in this case that we need to follow the evidence. So proven curriculum, and that is phonics. And we went away from that over the last 20 years, and we've seen scores drop since then. So we're going to do that. 2, we have to, if someone can't read by the 3rd grade, we have to hold them back. And because it's for the rest of their life. So we're going to do that. There's more to come on education, like parents' bills of rights, et cetera, but I'm at time, so I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Owen. Robert Wessels, to you on education.
This is one of the topics on my platform that got me really riled up, so much so that I decided, hey, I'm going to run for governor. Because we are failing our kids. As Owen said, 74% of our 4th graders are not proficient at reading, and that's just not acceptable. That's our future that we are failing. So number 1, day 1, Sarah Gagne Holmes is out. We need a new commissioner. Number 2, we need to get school choice in there. I agree with that. We need the competition. I come from the business world, and when you have competition in the business world, consumers win, you win. When we put competition into our public schools, the students and the parents win. That's what we need. We need us to win. We need our kids to win. And then with that school choice, I'm not your traditional school choice with a voucher because I hate the government strings that are attached to money. And so I want to go with the tax credit. And that tax credit means that the government's not giving you money, you're just not giving your government money. We can also, with that tax credit, we can opt in, which Janet Mills has chosen not to do with the big beautiful bill. We can opt into the Education Freedom Scholarship that was put in that bill on day 1 and make that an option for Mainers. Lastly, and most importantly, as they've said, we have to get back to the fundamentals. We're teaching the wrong alphabet with DEI, CRT, SEL. Let's get back to reading and writing and math.
Thank you, Mark. Bobby Charles, how would you change state education policy to improve student outcomes and get the woke out of our public schools?
So I come from a family of teachers. My mother was a remedial reading teacher for 40 years. She would be aghast at what's happening here right now. I have a brother who teaches, a sister who teaches. I taught. I will tell you what we need to do. 3 things: accountability, restructuring, and leverage. Accountability from the beginning to the end. We have to, in these schools, say you are accountable for learning, doing the hard thing, learning the character, learning the math, the reading. We have to give teachers the power to enforce that. We have to strip the state of massive administrative overreach. It's essential. We have to restructure the Department of Education. It's not just about changing out the commissioner. It's about wire brushing that place of all the ideology. It's got to be done. And finally, we need to leverage the 55% of budget that goes, although it's really kind of inaccurate to say that, but that goes to all of the local communities, and we have to empower the parents. This is about empowering parents, whether you're a homeschooler, public schooler, Christian schooler, secular, non-Christian school. At the end of the day, we have to prioritize the kids. If we don't, we have failed them.
Jim Libby, the same question to you.
Oh, great. Look, I've been an educator for 36 years. This morning when I started my day, I was at Thomas College teaching at 8 a.m., teaching an international economics class. And then I went to the state senate to do my job there. I've been involved at all levels. I've taught high school mathematics. I've taught at full-time at 3 different colleges. And I'm here to tell you exactly what's wrong. First of all, the commissioner's name is Pender Macon. And secondly, here are the problems. There is no discipline in the schools, so we need to work on the discipline problem. Thank you. Back to the basics was a really good idea. I agree with that. If you look in the law, Maine only requires 2 years of mathematics to graduate from high school in the law. Massachusetts requires 4 years of mathematics. They were at the bottom when I started in 1992, and we were at the top, and it's completely switched around. Better teacher training, that's a key piece. Teachers are coming into the profession, young people with all kinds of, they really want to do a great job. They're not getting the training they need, and there's differences between the college and the instruction. Back to the basics, good. Action on chronic absenteeism. Yeah. The absentee meeting that some schools have takes place once a month. In the meantime, a child has missed 10 classes. Are we going to really look at it that way? Thank you.
Hey, Steve. Steve, can I respond?
Yes, 30 seconds to respond.
So he mentioned Pender Macon. Absolutely correct. Thank you, Jim. I will stand by Sarah Gagne Holmes, who's over DHHS, also on day 1.
David Jones, what would you do to shape education policy to improve student outcomes and drive out pernicious ideologies from our public schools?
Well, it starts at the top. Pender Macon's got to go. There has to be a commissioner of education that gets it and really wants our kids to learn something other than DEI, SEL, and CRT. This is sickening what our children are learning. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter. She came home one weekend. She's in a school, and she said, "Oh, hey, Papa, you know, the librarian was reading a book to me about a little boy that wears a girl's dress, the boy in the tangerine dress." And I looked at her like, oh. She goes, "I know you didn't want me to listen to it, so I covered up my ears, but I could still hear what they said." And then she sees me infuriated, and she goes, "But Papa, please don't do anything because they won't like me." So here's a 5-year-old child that's being taught alternative lifestyles that I don't want her to know at that age, right? And fear of retribution. I went to school, and I wasn't the greatest student in the world. You can imagine that. I was the guy that was always in trouble. They had a permanent seat in me with a piece of tape on it, had my name on it in the principal's office. But, you know, the bottom line, I never knew my teacher's politics. We did math and science, and we did math and addition, subtraction, multiplication, division in our heads. We didn't depend upon a calculator or a phone. We got to teach our kids to use their brains again, and we have to have vocational training in the state of Maine. Try and get a plumber or a carpenter or anyone else to do anything to fix one of the problems you have around your house.
Last but not least, Jonathan Bush, your education policies as governor.
Yeah, from I believe number 1 under Jock McKernan all the way to number 42. I think someone said 76% of fourth graders can't read. But we do have a holiday for every possible reason to get out of school. And a special consulting firm from the state, when our measures fell apart, that did a study called Measure What Matters. And it has a bunch of things that you should measure instead of whether kids can read and do math because of AI. Holy cow. The solution, just like everywhere else I'm looking, beat back Augusta and bring in the market. This Department of Education needs to shrink. Like every other agency, it's got grant money and excuses and problems that has allowed it to backfill more and more and more people and money and mission. The mission statement isn't, we're going to teach these kids to read, so help me. It's, well, also we're going to appreciate social skills and history and all kinds of stuff. When you have that broad a mission, you can't succeed. I have kept thousands of people on mission. I had 6,500 people, started my basement with 2 friends, but we got to 6,500 people and 850 other companies. Think about all those school districts that depended on our marketplace. And we had strict real-time visibility and complete accountability. When a school in Maine can't teach their kids to read, they lose their funding. It goes to the families. The families can go Christian, they can go choice, they can give hell to the school administrators, but we need to get rid of the superintendents and the administrators and the distractions and stay focused on the core.
We'll now take a 5-minute break if anybody needs to go to the bathroom or powder their noses, but be back promptly in 5 minutes and we'll restart with the questions.
Okay.
Said I'm having a hard time controlling my face.
Oh. Did we start the timer?
Mission at the debate, Tom Shattuck. Pretty fiery first half of the debate. What was your initial takeaway so far?
I think Bobby Charles has been consistently very strong, and I thought he had a great command in strong, very tight answers. There's a Bobby Charles shirt right there.
Yeah.
How do you think he's doing? There you go.
There we go.
But I thought Owen was out of the box.
Yeah.
Just excellent. And actually, Gately and I said the same thing. That Owen was he kind of like stole the ball and ran it across down the court for a layup.
Saying that's what everyone in the comment, a lot of people in the comments were saying the same thing. And just to clarify, everyone, this is an intermission, so we will be back to part 2 of the debate in about 5 minutes here. But we're going to give our quick thoughts, and then we do have a great sponsor, JT Reed in Auburn, that John visited. So we'll get to that video and then kick it back to the second half of the debate. But John, your thoughts?
Of the debate so far, I mean, this is the pinnacle event of the election season. I mean, just, kudos to, the Cross Center, Maine Policy Institute, Civic Action League, and most importantly, the Maine Wire. This is a high-class event. Steve Robinson comes right out of the box, asks hard-hitting questions, fair and, balanced questions, but only Steve Robinson can do what Steve Robinson did tonight. I think it kind of put some of the candidates back on their heels a little bit, like, whoa, we haven't had this kind of a debate, but I think it was an important type of thing, and kudos to Steve. And I think everybody's having a good time, and I think it's very eye opening that I think Jack said it earlier in the pre-show. Like we have 8 good candidates. Any one of these 8 candidates is better.
Oh yeah.
Than Janet Mills, or or Dr. Shaw or Shanna Bellows or Hannah Pingree. So, but people have to get up and get out and vote this election.
Yes.
And if you liked a person that you saw today and you don't come out and vote for them in the primary, then you have failed Maine just as much as Governor Mills has failed Maine. You have to get out and vote. This is the most important election. People say it all the time, oh, this is the most important election of our lifetime. But this one truly is. So if you're impressed with anybody today and you don't come out and vote for these guys, because these guys are working hard.
Yeah.
They are really working hard. They're nonstop. They're 7 days a week. And this is the perfect opportunity for you to see who is the best candidate for you today.
And Jack, you and I, the first thing we did was when we came out here for a moment to reload in the lobby area, we'll say that Owen McCarthy just seemed to score the first bunch of points.
Well, except for Steve Robinson's points. I mean, he got like 8 right in a row. But yeah, Owen McCarthy, like, I don't know these candidates. I'm from Massachusetts. I'm the visitor. I don't know who has the advantage. I'm just saying, as a messenger, all these guys have more or less the same views. McCarthy sounded like a pretty good messenger to me tonight so far.
Yeah, and you know what else he had?
He's always been impressive in all the debates, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Well, and I thought that Bobby Charles had just the right amount of heat and passion and depth of knowledge in his answers, especially about crime. He said what I wanted to hear. He scratched an itch that anybody reads the Maine Wire wants to hear somebody's kick some asses. But Owen McCarthy was just kind of suddenly the most fun guy at the dinner table. And I know that that's not really substantive.
Charles wasn't bad.
Yeah.
I just think his expectations were a little bit higher. And so, so and I had no expectations from Mr. McCarthy.
Not at all. As I was it almost, and I know this is a sin to say this, but I almost was like, do we need all 8? Now I'm glad that he made the cut. I'm glad that just about everybody.
I think Jonathan Bush always kind of impresses too. It surprisingly impresses. Yes.
Yes, I totally agreed. I uploaded a piece of video with Jonathan Bush talking about how to fix Medicaid. That's kind of his bailiwick, right? And he's a quirky guy, which makes him very interesting. He was doing crowd work for a moment. He's like, "Oh, no, please, please, please." And I thought, anytime somebody can break through, and go right ahead.
Well, I was going to say this has been a great discussion. I hate to do this, but we are in a little bit of a time crunch. So, John, we do have a great sponsor for this event. Everyone has been concerned about your safety. So I'm going to play a video right here that I think is going to alleviate a lot of people.
We're here out in Auburn. I've been in business over 40 years now. Did a whole bunch of time on the Auburn Police Department, over 17 years to be exact on the Auburn Police Department. So I know the area extremely well. I get along extremely well with everybody. It's just at the point in time that individuals, they've got to start taking care of themselves. They can't be looking down the road for the police department to do it, for the neighbors to do it. Start taking care of yourself. Start protecting your own property, your own family. And that's what we do here.
Very nice to meet you. Thanks for all your help and everything.
Where's this come from?
This is the Sword of Truth. This is the banned item from the debate that you're on.
It is?
Oh, yeah.
Let's go. We give safety courses. We will teach you how to help teach you how to take care of yourself. We have everything here, virtually every handgun you can imagine, long gun, handgun. Come and see us. Come and see us. Come in on a Saturday or Sunday, get to know us, get to know the individuals that come in. A lot of veterans come in, a lot of old-time police officers come in. Boy, the stories we tell, that's something. But thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for doing what you're doing. We greatly appreciate it. And I do have to make another point. Steve Robinson, he and I have something in common. We are both graduated from the same high school. Vaughn grew up in Dexter, so go Dexter too.
Well, on behalf of the Reeds, hopefully you'll accept it. Timber Freedom. 9 mil.
Wow.
Still carry.
Wow. That's extremely generous of you guys.
You betcha. You got to speak up. You got to speak up. You've got to sponsor who's out and about. And that's why we want to sponsor you. Exactly what. You were on the front lines. You and Steve were on the front lines.
Well, it's officially all yours.
How great are these guys from JT Reed's? I mean, these are real Americans. They're real Mainers. Big supporters of the Maine Wire, and they just want the fraud and corruption to be, resolved here in Maine and go back to Maine the way life is supposed to be. Fraud-free and vacation land and home of the free. And these guys are great. You can't thank them enough for their donations and my gift here and donating sponsorship to the debate up in Bangor. And these guys are great. Thank you, JT Reed.
All right, right back to the debate hall we go for the second half of
New Hampshire.
because that's where he can operate his business. That cannot happen here anymore. The idea that Janet Mills was a queen ruling over us the entire time during COVID is sickening. I was the one, I created a lawsuit with several friends to sue her for violating our constitutional rights during COVID. She violated our 4th, 5th, and 6th. I had Steve Smith do it. We had great people. Guess what? We lost. Why? Because the damn judges. The judges we have here in the state of Maine, we've got to really shake this thing up. So we got to make sure that government always doesn't, the government never, ever, ever does what they did to Rick Savage or anybody else like that. Tell them they can open up their shop, let them go out and buy the food, and then the day before they do it, shut them down again. That is not the Maine I know, and that is not the Maine I would have as governor of the state of Maine.
Thank you, David. Owen McCarthy.
Rick, to get you to come back, we got to do a lot of stuff, okay? First, we need to fix the fundamentals. And to me, fix the fundamentals is we're going to do a 10% income tax cut immediately on day one, and we're going to phase it out over time. So that's no longer an impediment with New Hampshire. Number two is we're a small business state. We have 135,000 small businesses. We also have 135,000 rules and regulations, one for each of you. So what we're going to do, for every one new rule and regulation proposed, we're cutting 2. So over time, that's going to go down, and we're going to grow the small businesses, and that ratio is going to get much more favorable in the future. 3, Rick, if I were you, I would look at the energy costs in Maine and say, like, what am I doing running a business here? And that is a major problem. As I travel across the state of Maine, I'm talking to both like people that own farm homes and businesses, and they're saying, why should I stay there? My electricity bill has doubled or tripled. They're gone up 4x in some places. So we're going to tackle that too. I don't know if you knew this, but 10% of your electricity bill right now is solar subsidies, right? Those are hidden fees. There's another $400 million in hidden fees with other programs that have been pushed through on the generators, hidden by politicians that don't want to have accountability. We need to take those hidden fees, bring them back into the budget, and bring them down as low as possible so Rick Savage can move back to Maine.
Jonathan Bush.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is why I'm running. We're a state of 137,000 businesses. More businesses per capita than, did you say John Bush?
No, we picked up 2,000. Thanks for it. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
137,000 small businesses in a state, more of them per capita than any state except Florida. And yet we're number 46 in our small business climate. Fourth worst. That's unbelievable. And it is because Democrats in Augusta grab power by virtue signaling. They say, I'm going to take care of Betty, so I get an agency or a law or a rule where I can adjudicate, as opposed to good judgment Mainers deciding who and what they want to associate with. We need to relentlessly beat back those commissars that have accumulated power over time so convincingly that businesses start to believe that we're serious. In my business, I was a total outsider, and I attracted thousands of people to believe that they could be in the overregulated, bureaucratic healthcare space as free-moving people. And when we got successful, we invited hundreds. We had a program called More Disruption Please, MDP, and we brought hundreds of businesses in to sell through to our customers, to wake up the economy. I have done nothing for 30 years, but make the free market work for small businesses of every kind. And that is the kind of CEO we need. A lobbyist or an insider to the existing Augusta virus will not cut it.
Bobby Charles.
So I think one of the things we all agree on, or should agree on, is this is a business hostile state. We need to become a business-friendly state. And I would argue that most of the folks on this stage and in this audience know how to do that. We are going to roll back hundreds of regulations that pick any sector in the economy, any small business sector, they're destroying it. We're going to roll back the income tax. It will take me 4 years. I have CPAs working it to get it down as close to zero as we can, and we will get it down. We will roll back the property taxes by rolling back all of the mandates that are being inflicted right now on towns. We are going to to put this state back in a position where energy is actually affordable. And with Jim Lebrecht and a lot of other good, hard-working people, we're going to roll back the hundreds of regulations that drive energy costs up. I think we can get them down 30 or 40%, and there's a whole plan for that. At the end of the day, we're going to try to make this not a state where every single year, and the legislators here know that, they raise the income tax again. There are two more bills in there, LD 229 and 1089, and they will drive out 7% of our top earners. We lose 300 or 400 businesses a year. We need to reverse the vicious cycle, create a virtuous cycle, and become known for being a low tax, low spending, pro-business state.
Penn Midgley, what would you do to bring guys like Rick back to the state of Maine?
All right, this is such a hard topic to do in a minute and a half. So, I mean, I know what's going on here. I created 15,000 jobs just from building one company. What's going on right now in Maine is there is 0 jobs forecasted in the economic plan for Janet Mills, 0 through 2029. You can't even do that bad if you try. So you've got to get into full pro-business support mode. Right now, our welfare system, too, is working against our business owners. The average welfare recipient in the state of Maine gets $40,000 in benefits. That's why we're 4% lower in labor force participation. Nobody needs to work. So you got to get that system going again. Day one, you got to have an executive order to review all the Democrat legislation that has been harmful to business and how to unwind that. Another executive order that has to go in, just because it's one of the worst deals that I've ever seen, is this sappy dam deal. You got to kill that, because that just speaks to what Maine does to businesses. Okay? You got to cut corporate and personal taxes. Taxes are far too high. We're one of the highest tax states in the country, one of the lowest average incomes. You got to get costs lowered for business owners. Right now, there's no reason to start a business in Maine. Between electricity, employment, taxes, regulations, over 135,000 regulations, that's a real number. You have got to get things like FMLA out of the way. 1%. They're already looking to raise FMLA to 1.5 or 2%. It hasn't even started yet, because that many people are applying for their break before it even begins. Business owners can't manage things like that, so we've got to get common sense back in play.
Garrett Mason.
I'll tell a short story. First of all, Rick, I remember watching everything that happened to you from my couch while we were during COVID, and it was just horrific. And it was one of those stories that it'll forever stick with me for what you went through, and I'm very sorry for that. And I agree with so much of what has been said on this stage, but I want to tell you a short story. When I was elected to the legislature, we had a rally, and it was introducing the first Republican majority that had ever been in 40 years. And while I was standing there, I watched up and down the stairs as people were crying. And I leaned over to the person I was with, Dale Crafts, and I said, Dale, they're so happy that we're here. We've come to save them. And he looked at me and laughed and said, those people are Democrats, and they're going to lose their jobs. And when I'm elected governor, that is exactly what I'm going to go after. We are going to go after the bureaucrats that did that to Rick Savage, and we're going to make sure they're no longer anywhere close to implementing any regulation like Janet Mills did to him. It's untenable what happened there. We have to clean house in the bureaucracy, because they're like ticks, so many of them. They burrow in very deep and make you very sick.
Jim Libby.
Rick, I hope you'll look at my record. I want you to consider my campaign, go to my website, think of my record. The first thing I'm going to bring to your attention and to other business owners in here is that I personally wrote the program that is called Better, Business Equipment Tax Rebate Program. I personally wrote that, and we passed it into law. I got some help. We turned it into a governor's bill, but I wrote it for that governor. And that has had research behind it. There's a report that says it has saved thousands of jobs in this state and created them. Another part of my record that I'd like you to consider is that when the executives from Nestle called me up back in the 1990s and said, we've got 6 sites that we're planning to extract water from, 3 of them are out of state. I said to them, we can create a TIF, tax increment financing, around that district in Hollis, Maine, and we can build a Poland Spring plant. And guess what? We did. And go back and look at the video, because I was interviewed right out front of the plant when we had the groundbreaking. And you will see that I have been a champion of tax cuts and reducing regulation for 20 some odd years in the Maine legislature. I have worked so hard while I was a full-time employee, I have worked so hard to bring down taxes and regulations. So I would say, look at the record.
Robert Wessel.
I've spent the last 20 years running stores, doing retail, and creating a culture within my store, a culture that's positive and works for both customers as well as associates. And the reality is that what you're describing right now is an absolute toxic culture in our state government. It's a culture of retaliation, it's a culture of retribution and fear, and it has to end. We need new leadership in the state government that will hold people accountable. On day one, we will need to have people sign explaining this is how we should be acting in our jobs, in our government. And then we hold them accountable to that expectation. It's really simple, but it's really, clearly they're not doing it. And so you see that through Greenies Turkeys. You see that certainly with Rick Savage. You also see it with DHHS daycares. I've talked to several of them around it. So again, this is a toxic culture that is absolutely destroying our state, and it's keeping people from opening up and being honest and telling what they're seeing inside. So the reality is we're shooting down whistleblowers before they even have the chance to blow that whistle. Again, I agree with so much of what everybody said as far as the business environment. We have to repeal regulations, repeal, and then we have to get our costs under control because we're chasing businesses out of the state.
As governors, you're going to have to think on your feet, so we're going to cut the response time down to 60 seconds to make sure these trains run on time and save you 2 minutes for your closing statements. We found him, Mike Quattrano. He was actually out registering voters, knocking on doors.
Nice.
Mike Quattrano from the Maine Civic Action.
Thank you all very much for being here. Obviously, one of you is going to win this primary and be our nominee. And then the real fight begins. For the love of God, you have to win this general election for the state of Maine. You have to. This question is directed to each of you. Why are you the best candidate to win this general election? Or what is your plan to win this general election for the state of Maine? Thank you all very much.
Garrett Mason, you're first on this question.
I love this question. First of all, I'm the only one that's kept a back-to-back Senate majority ever in state history since the 90s. I've done this before. I can do it again. One of the things that I did when I was in office was I started an internship program that saw 66 people knock on hundreds of thousands of doors from 2014 to 2018, and that's what caused us to win the majority in the state Senate. The other thing that I will do is every single time that I have been on a ballot, I have always worked with not only the other House members when I was a senator in my district, but anybody who needed help. I was willing to stand in the gap and raise money for them, and I will do that as governor. We need somebody who can not only implement the job as governor, but we need somebody who can be a standard bearer for the Maine Republican Party. I've done that before. I can do it again. The election piece is my favorite part of the job, to be honest with you. It's a lot of fun to get people elected, and when you do it right, you can win and implement real change.
Ben Midgley.
Okay, 60 seconds. Okay, I'd say the highlights are, well, look, I'm from Maine. I love this place. It matters a lot to me. I think your temperament and your focus when you get into the general election is going to matter significantly. I think you have to talk to the independents and the disenfranchised Democrats in a very particular way so they understand, because they're feeling pain too, that the Republicans are the ones that are going to set up the structures so individuals and families can take much better care of themselves rather than having the state take care of them. Mathematically, and I'll say it again in my closing, I'll just say it now, you can't win this election without independents. We're outnumbered by 40,000 registered Democrats. So one way or another, whoever gets through has to make sure you connect with those people in the right way so they're just not looking at some upset Republican or just blaming Democrats for everything, but somebody who's going to bring solutions to the table that are going to benefit everyone. And then we need to make sure we keep Republicans in the office for years to come.
Robert Wessels.
Maine is fiercely independent. As I've been campaigning over the last 2.5 years, I've heard it from hundreds of people who say the best government is one that stays out of the way, or the best government is one that leaves me alone. That is the government that I'm proposing. I am a small government guy. We need to cut our government. We need to get them out of our business. And again, they're doing the exact opposite right now. This is me. We need a governor that will raise all ships, right? And I have, my campaign over the last 2 years have worked with at least 21 other campaigns around the state, House, Senate, local selectmen, and brought them up. Again, if I get in governor, great. But if we don't have the House and if we don't have the Senate, then it's just a fancy veto pen. We absolutely have to do that. I am Cincinnatus. I'm a farmer. I'm going to come to Rome. We're going to get rid of the tyranny, and then go back to the farm.
Jim Libby.
Sure. Well, I think I am the best candidate, and one of the things that I really want to do is take on the toughest problems. You know what? One of the toughest problems that affects every single one of you? The degradation of our healthcare system. And that has happened because we've allowed the state to play around with the Medicaid system. And we need to freeze the people that are on the Medicaid system, and we need to change eligibility because our current governor thinks that Medicaid for people who need help should be a backdoor single-payer system. We can't have that. And I will stand up to people who aren't willing to do that. Medicaid is, it's a hands-off political issue. No, it isn't. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do. The second thing is, did you see the bill? The Democrats want to make sure that we put a moratorium on building data centers. I want investment in this state. They want to make sure we don't have it. And almost all of their policies prove it. Thank you.
Owen McCarthy, your plan to win the general election.
Mike, to win this, we need good message and good messenger. Where I studied to find the best message is an ironic place because Vermont had the most Republican legislator wins in 2024. They talked about economy and they talked about safety. My plan, Maine 2040, addresses opportunity, affordability, and discipline and how we run our government. All things we can win on Republican values with independent and some limited Democrat votes. As a messenger, I have that vision. I also am an entrepreneur. I've created jobs here. I'm an engineer. I solve problems and I think outside the box. I think that's what we're going to need to win in 2026. I also am the only candidate on this stage with any roots north of Augusta. And I can speak to rural voters, and I built businesses in the southern part of the state, so I can merge the two together. We're in the fourth industrial revolution right now with what's happening with AI, and I've worked in our heritage industries of paper and pulp. I could talk to you about sawmills and software. You put those together, we can win this year.
David Jones.
Well, I'm that guy. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not a career politician. They're the ones that got us to where we are here today. We need someone that's an outsider, an absolute businessman, a CEO, someone that's ran his own company, signed the front of the check, and built the company from scratch. Now, we got problems in Augusta. They're serious. Is it going to be solved with more of the same? Are we all going to be satisfied with lip service? You get a guy like Bobby Charles. I've been involved here in the state of Maine for 30 years. I've been out here busting my butt protecting conservative values. He drops in here in 2022 and tells me he's going to run the state of Maine. Please, cut me a break. I think what we have to do here is we got to hire someone that's got a set of principles that are really, really in the favor of Mainers. If we don't, it's only going to get bad.
Bobby Charles, 60 seconds to respond.
So I grew up in a little town of 500 people, and the values that define me and have defined me all my life are the values of Maine. I was working at 12. At 17, I was building houses with World War II vets. I've been back in this state every year of my entire life, and most seasons of those years. I look around and I look at what's going on in this state, and I say to myself, when I got back here, gosh, I am just in shock. This is not the state that I grew up in. I am truly committed to the idea that if we don't work together to fix it now, this state will not be brought back. So I went away to serve. I served my country. My whole life is about service. I served my country for 10 years as a naval intelligence officer. I served in the Reagan White House. I served with law enforcement. I served running and training people all over the world, police officers in Iraq, Afghanistan. I set it all up. I am about service. I am not about money. And as a result, when I got back to Maine, I realized that all those tools I had managing billions of dollars and gunning down drug traffickers required stepping up. So I am stepping up.
Jonathan Bush, your plan to win.
How are we going to win the general, right?
Correct.
We've lost 14,000 members of the Republican Party since 2014. But we have good news on our side, which is Mainers want to switch right now. The right track, wrong direction. They want to switch. All parties want to switch. So what's key is when you ask them why, they say the economy. They say Augusta got too big, and I can't tell my kids that they're going to do even as well as me. There's not enough opportunity in this state, and we're being suffocated. So that's the playbook. If you want to bring a winning team to that strategy, you must bring an outsider who has successfully generated thousands of jobs for hundreds of businesses. I started a company in my basement. I grew it to 6,500 people of every party, and they are supporting me anyway because they believe in me. They've seen me make possibility for them at scale. They've seen me wake up Belfast and Waldo County. I thought we were doing 90. One?
We cut it down to 60 seconds.
Oh, great. Well, that's enough. I had a really good last 30, but you'll have to wait till the next question for it.
And Bobby, your most recent speaking was responding to David Jones. So 60 seconds. What is your plan to win the general election?
It is a two-part plan. First, people say to me, are you going to pivot in the general? And I say no. Why? Because Democrats and independents also think their property taxes and income taxes are too high. They also want the drug traffickers out of here. In fact, in southern Maine, even more, I think, than in many of the places in the northern part of the state. They want addiction services in this state, and they want their schools back. They have kids, too, and a lot of them don't want their money stolen and given away to a bunch of people in Medicaid fraud. So reason one is, and the proof of this, by the way, is when I was getting signatures, we ended up with dozens and dozens of Democrats switching on the spot with the little green cards to vote for me. So I said, wow, this is really interesting. I talked to some of the old timers. They said, no, that doesn't happen. I have 4,000 people who have given small dollar donations. They believe in me. The second big reason is I have the tools. I've managed billions of dollars. I will get the traffickers out. And even some of the Democrats and independents trust me.
Our next question will come from Maine Policy Institute Board Chairman Scott Wellman.
Thank you all for being here. It's been enlightening. Maine state budget has grown 77% in the last decade. Governor Janet Mills has proposed hundreds of millions of dollars in new spending in this legislative session alone, including a massive transfer of money from the Rainy Day Fund. Growth in spending is unprecedented, irresponsible, and unsustainable. What is your specific, realistic plan to stop this exponential growth in spending, and how will you accomplish it in a potentially hostile legislature?
Ben Midgley, you're first. 60 seconds.
Okay, so it took 200 years to get the state budget to $7 billion, and it only took 7 more years to get to $12 billion. That's your tax money every year going up. Right now, we have one of the highest tax states in the country with one of the lowest average incomes. The Democrats just bragged about having $250 million surplus in taxes. They stop you from getting conformity with national tax relief, and now they want to raise taxes. So it's all about tax. So we got to lower the taxes, and we've got to lower the spending. So day one executive order, back to zero-based budgeting. Second executive order, no more no big contracts. You got a condensed budget in the state right now. It's 57 line items. Like I said, 80% is in 2 departments. Our main care system, 30% of the people in the state are on main care. Okay, you got to get that off. You create a bridge for these folks to make money so they can get off. They're not locked. They're locked in it right now. And then you create an orientation program for when they go in. That way you slow the input and accelerate the output, and you shrink the largest expense in the state. Am I on 60 here or 90? Okay.
60 seconds, Ben.
All right.
I
got a lot more on that.
60 seconds to you.
Yeah, so I've been part of budget negotiations for many years, and we passed the largest tax cut in state history with a split with Democrats, a 2/3 budget, which you don't even hear about anymore in Augusta. But we were able to pass the largest tax cut in state history under that very scenario, where we got Democrats to vote with us. But I think the biggest thing that you can do is you have to have somebody who understands how the budget process actually works. The next governor is going to get handed a budget from Janet Mills that's going to top $13 billion. And if you don't have the experience, you're not going to understand that while you're the candidate for governor, you have to be starting to work on your budget in August, because that's when they start building their budgets. With me, you will have somebody who's been there, done that, and can actually build a budget alongside of winning a campaign. That way we can get back to pre-2020 spending levels, reduce all the people who are on Medicaid. We can get our school funding under control and actually be able to afford the budget we pass.
David Jones.
Give me that question again.
What are you going to do to rein in spending?
Well, let's start off right away with we got 1,500 jobs that are funded and unfulfilled. That's $200 million sitting in the bank. It's a slush fund for people to spend. Let's look at Maine Care. Why don't we look at Maine Care? You know, we got over 400,000 people. That's a third of the state of Maine that's on Maine Care. How about if we make each and every one of them people on Maine Care reapply? They need to reapply, and anyone who should not be getting it, especially non-citizens, is kicked off immediately. As soon as those applications come in, Mainers will benefit. I'm tired of Mainers being neglected. I've seen it. I've been traveling all over the state. The idea that Mainers cannot get the help that they truly need when we have non-citizens getting it. So if we reapply, have everyone that's on Maine Care reapply, then we will eliminate a tremendous amount of spending here in the state of Maine. That's a boatload of money. And the idea that anybody from away is getting a benefit that a Mainer can't, I have a problem with that.
Thank you, David. Robert Wessels.
So I will start as soon, we need to cut $2 billion from the budget, and we're going to start that process as soon as I win the primary, because we do have to have a budget ready as soon as you start in governor. We're going to, in that $2 billion cut, we're going to freeze hiring. And they've talked about it several times. There are tons of positions that are currently built into each budget that we're funding but not using. We do a hiring freeze. We pull those positions out. We stop benefits to non-citizens. We cut the bureaucracy out of Maine Department of Education. Again, not the schools themselves, but the bureaucracy that is plaguing Augusta. We need somebody who is not going to be tweaking. It is time for reform in Augusta, and that's what I'm going to bring.
Thank you, Robert. Jonathan Bush.
Let's not talk about investigations or freezes. This is like trying to take over knotweed with a pair of hair scissors. This is an aggressive restructuring. We need to go after the shrinking of Augusta in an aggressive, sophisticated way. Thing one, cut $1 billion. The governor drops that bill down, and we watch. If we haven't won the majority in this election, who votes against it? And we run great candidates right up the nose of those people that voted against the tax cut in a state that's the 5th highest in the country. Then we start selling. Not when you're cutting somebody, there's got to be a winner. When you cut health care, the doctors have got to win. You got to say, we're going to give you more power and opportunity for upside. When you cut education, all these superintendents, every 5 feet, there's another superintendent. You've got to have families in charter schools that are winners that come and lobby for you. In each area of government, there are winners in the wings that want to be invited into play, and they will lobby all sides of the aisle to try to get, once there's a belief that as a governor who can do it, they will come to our aid.
Jim Libby.
Well, look, government is like a spigot. You know, you have to shut off the spigot. So the things that we need to talk about are lowering the rates. So I'm going to lower your income tax rate. We're going to save $1 billion over 4 years, and you're going to keep more money in your pocket. I'm also going to expand not just the Homestead Act, which needs to be expanded. It's been at $25,000 exemption on your home all the way through this inflationary period. We're going to triple the homestead and make a difference and put money back in your pocket. And when we're done, about $2 billion is going to come off of that budget. And that's really important that we make sure that we do that. Now, we're also going to cut jobs. For example, I'm on the education committee. Did you know that we recently put together a green buildings coordinator position for the Department of Education? That person works from home. They make $111,000 a year plus bennies. We're going to cut jobs.
Bobby Charles.
So it's obvious we're living in an Orwellian world from everything that you hear here. I just went through the 800-page budget, and it has grown $4.75 billion under her. So instead of cutting just $1 billion over a 4-year block, I am going to cut $4 billion. I am going to drive the income tax down and out. And then I'm going to do 12 basic things in 30 seconds. Zero-based budgeting. No more bringing the old budget and then adding to it. Start from zero. Performance metrics. Statewide hiring freeze. It has to be done. LePage did it. We have to get back to the idea she's grown the state employees by 20%. Attrition, bring them down. In fact, bring them lower. IGs, put the conservatives in charge of the financial side of this house on the administrative side, require people to work, get the Medicaid fraud out of there, all illegal aliens out of the state, water brushed, and you can look for the rest on the website.
Owen McCarthy, take us home.
You see this pen? This pen's going to be a red pen, and it's going to be out of ink after the first week in office. We're going to first put the Maine Performance Review to work, where we look at keep, fix, close programs, and we're going to make heavy recommendations to close programs. Second, for all fraud dollars, which we know there's a lot thanks to Steve and crew, that we find we're giving them back to the people of Maine. So, and we will publish that weekly, and you'll see what it's there, and you'll get it back. Third, we're going to re-sign a taxpayer bill of rights such that we are not going to increase anything by anything more than inflation ever in the history of Maine into the future. And finally, we're going to restructure how we're going to look at buying out existing employees and then moving in technology to modernize our government and make it better. I think there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained there, particularly if we can buy people out of their contracts. I think there is billions and billions of dollars to save in the budget.
Thank you all. We'll now move on to closing statements. If you want more questions, some of you are going to have to drop out. Every candidate is going to have 2 minutes for their closing statement. We'll go in the opposite direction of the first questions. So Garrett Mason, you're first.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Steve, for a wonderful debate. I think we all had a great time, and to Maine Policy Institute for having us here tonight. Like I said in my opening statement, this is truly an upgrade, and it's really been awesome. So well done. But you know, I think that you heard on stage tonight why Republicans deserve to have your vote in the 2026 election and why we deserve to be in the Blaine House once again. There is not a lot of disagreement amongst all of us on this stage. I would say that almost every idea that I heard tonight, I would agree with and I would implement and would be part of my plans moving forward. But I don't think that that's what this election is about. Our ideas are all the same, but the way that we get them done is different. You see, I think that the next governor has to have the right blend of skills and experience to be able to get the job done, not only on day one, but far before that. I've been the benefactor of a really, really cool experiences in my life. I've been able to be a state senator, serve for 8 years. I've been able to run my own businesses, and I've been able to blend those experiences into something that really matters. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have time for any on-the-job training when we get to the Blaine House in November. We don't have time to figure it out. We have to be ready to go right away. And so while I would vote for almost any man on this stage to be our governor because they would be far better than what the other side is offering, I believe that I am the right person for this time. I would appreciate your vote on June 9th. Please visit us at masonformaine.com, and thank you so much for having us tonight.
Thank you, Garrett. Jonathan Bush.
We have a problem. Maine is stuck. If you take out a little pocket of Portland, we've gone back 20 years with zero economic growth. And the worm is turning, it's poisoning us. It's making us not who we are. We are resilient, flexible, hilarious, hardworking, good-natured people who don't need much, but just permission to be that self that we are. We need a radical plan. We need to radically restructure, like a takeover. Go in, dramatically cut taxes so that we're in the playbook, then go through every agency and every span and layer and prune it back. Prune back every single one. I have built my life making systems work at scale. I started in my basement. I grew all the way up to 6,500 people and 840 other companies feeding through the same platform we built. I am uniquely able to do that. More importantly, probably, in the doing of that, I had the faith and belief in this great state to bring 1,000 jobs here, 954 jobs here. I went through the baloney of getting in here. I don't think I hired Bobby's lobbying firm or Garrett's lobbying firm, but we had to hire lobbying firms and lawyers to get through Maine's bureaucracy so that we could do what we wanted, which was grow Maine's economy by succeeding with the great Maine workforce and work ethic. I believe that's what we need, not just to win. We need to put a guy up who has run things at scale, but who's an outsider to the mess we have and to the lobbying game. And then we need to bring those skills into Augusta, not catch the virus, but stay relentless. Cut those taxes, shrink back those agencies, and wake up the marvelous, flexible, gritty free marketeers that we are and rise.
Thank you, Jonathan. Bobby Charles, 2 minutes.
Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for caring about the state of Maine. 4 words. This needs to stop. We're in a state that is overspending, overtaxing, runaway drug trafficking, illegal aliens everywhere, Medicaid fraud. Our schools are broken. We need to fix it. Many moons ago, I worked in the Reagan White House, and Reagan went to the Berlin Wall. And you remember what he said? He said, tear down this wall. And people doubted. The world was full of doubters. They said it can't happen. And you know what? He didn't brook doubters. His attitude was, if you can envision it, if you can believe in it, you can do it. And you know what? In 1989, that wall fell. And I was over there behind the Iron Curtain for years beforehand, and when it fell, I went back. And these kids had sledgehammers that they were whacking that wall down with. And I will tell you, he proved it could be done. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to envision an accountable Maine. I want you to believe that an accountable Maine is in our power right here today. And then I want you to work with all you've got to do it. And I will tell you, I will be working with you every second of every day to get there, because we have to do this. And as an emblem of the fact that we can do this, we can envision it, believe it, do it. And quite honestly, at this moment, we should be one team, one fight, starting tonight. This is the Berlin Wall I brought back from that moment. Come see it. This means hope. It means we can do it. It means we must do it now.
Thank you, Bobby. Owen McCarthy.
I'm going to end where I started. Who's ready to win in 2026?
Yeah.
Let me tell you my why. So I grew up in the shadow of Mount Katahdin, the son of a 3rd-generation logger and a 2nd-generation lunch lady in a town called Patten, Maine. I grew up in a trailer on my grandfather's land, and I had it good. It was a great path. The schools, when I went through them, were fourth in the country. We've discussed they're no longer there. I learned a lot about hard work when I watched my father, who's right over there, go to work at 2 a.m., come home at 6 p.m. every single day and work on the truck on the weekends. You learn a lot about accountability and personal responsibility when as soon as you step out of line, your mom gets a phone call and you get disciplined when you get home. I then had a great path and went to the University of Maine on the pulp and paper scholarship and worked in our heritage paper industry, been in every paper mill except for Madawaska in the state, which I will fix. And I then became an entrepreneur. I've started multiple companies, the most recent one in medical devices. That helps people improve walking if you have a stroke or live with Parkinson's disease. We raised $60 million of capital into this state, hired people, navigated all the journeys you need to get through healthcare, and proven you can do innovation here and not just in Silicon Valley. I don't believe, I'm also a husband and a father, and I don't believe, they're important to the story. I do not believe that those kids, Oliver and Theodore, have the same opportunity that I have. I don't believe if, like many of you, like a working class Mainer, it's affordable to live here, and this is 100% policy decisions coming out of Augusta. I think we need to hit the ground running. I have a plan, Maine 2040, to go do that. Read it on my website, because in closing, we need to make sure Maine is more than just vacation land for wealthy people. That's a place that we can live, work, and prosper. A place where whether you grew up on a double wide in the outskirts of Patton or a trailer off a dirt road in Presque Isle, you can use your God-given talents to reach your highest potential with nothing, not your state, and especially not your state government standing in your way. Thank you, Steve.
The applause line's in the middle of your statement. It's a double-edged sword, man.
I know,
David
I gotta
Jones.
speak faster.
Yes, so, I've been on the trail now for about 8 or 9 months, and I've listened to this guy, Bobby Charles, right? And you can say what right? Get as mad as you want. The bottom line is, I don't believe anything he's saying. He embellishes everything he's ever done in his career. He inflates it to be something that it's not. The idea that you can eliminate $4 billion on a budget, making promises you can't keep, that's not what I want. I want reality. I want to make sure that whoever we elect to be governor of the state of Maine knows that what reality is. He needs a reality check. I don't think there's anybody that's ever served in the House or the Senate that would ever believe you can cut $4 billion off of this budget. It just doesn't make sense. He's missed 4 debates. 4 debates. He refuses to show up. I'm glad he's here tonight, and I'm finally getting a chance to talk to him on stage. But the bottom line is this. He's a no-show. He's dropped into the state in 2022. He's not the guy that I want to see governor of the state of Maine. Whether it's me or not, I don't care. All these other guys, I like them. Bobby Charles, there's no way in hell. He's not what we need. He's not what we need here in the state of Maine. We do not need a DC swamp rat. We do not need someone like Bobby Charles, who's come here and is filling us with a bunch of lies. So I'm being as plain as simple, like it or not. This is how I feel. I'm a man of truth. I have always been a man of truth. I say it the way I see it. You don't like it? You can't handle the truth? I'm sorry. Go to BobbyCharlesExposed.com. You don't believe me? Go to BobbyCharlesExposed.com. I didn't create that site, and I was surprised to find it. So if you want to see the truth, you want to see what's really going on, check it out.
Just save that kind of fight for the closing statements. Come on. We didn't contemplate this in the rules, but Bobby Charles, 30 seconds to rebut.
So this is what it looks like to be the front runner by double digits. The bottom line is my values are defined by the state that I grew up in. And I grew up right here in rural Maine. I did leave and I came back like so many of our Maine kids. I served my country, 10 years Navy intelligence. At the end of the day, we need to support our kids so they stay here. And I love this state. Vote for me.
We'll return to closing statements. Ben Midgley, 2 minutes.
Great to follow that. Okay. Well, I also want to say thank you to all of you for being here today. It really means a lot that you all showed up. It shows you care. Thank you to the Maine Policy Institute and Steve Robinson for doing a great job with this many candidates. So thank you. So 50% of winning is showing up. And I love that saying. A friend told me that, and I teach it to our kids all the time. So I showed up. These candidates showed up. You all showed up. Now we have to get our people to show up, and they have to get their people to show up. And if they do, that's 50% of getting us there. The other 50% is the right candidate. I have run billion-dollar companies. I have built a billion-dollar company from scratch and created 15,000 jobs. Very few people will ever have that experience, and it has given me a skill set to be able to run this government fluently and efficiently. Additionally, my team, in my opinion, has the most depth of any team in the field in terms of political expertise. I am literally surrounded by experts in state government, and they have won governor races in the state before. That being said, and I mentioned this earlier, we do have a math problem. Okay, there are 40,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans. And the only way we can win that is by getting the independents and the disenfranchised Dems in with us. And we do that, we win. We don't do that, we lose. It's that simple. That's how the math works. You all have to make that critical decision. And you all are the only ones that can do it. So I will just tell you in my closing that we all feel strongly that my team is best prepared to give you the best chance to have that win in November. So thank you again for your time, and we hope to earn your support.
Jim Libby, your closing statement.
Well, thank you, Stephen, and I appreciate it. I credit my success to family, faith, and ability, and I have no idea why I've been so blessed to have such a great life. Everything I've ever tried, I've been able to complete, from a PhD to creating a graduate program at Thomas College, co-creating it with a friend of mine, Tom Edwards. And when I wanted to coach basketball, I coached it. When I wanted to coach women, I coached them. I was offended when we created this whole idea that men should play in women's sports. And thank you. And I took the time with the group of supporters that I have, who are all volunteers, because again, I'm running a clean elections campaign. And I said to them, go out there and collect some signatures and let's make sure we get that on the ballot. Why did I do that? Not only do I believe in that, but understand this. For 40 years, I've been watching the Democrats put things on the November ballot that would help them. And this year, we were able to put something on the November ballot that'll bring out the conservatives, the Republicans, and the independents who believe in us and know that we are right. I was blessed with a great wife. My wife, Jennifer, will make an incredible first lady. We have worked 5 jobs for as many years as I can think of. She is a special educator in the elementary school level, and she also works as a part-time professor at the University of Southern Maine. And as you know, when I started my time back in the legislature, I became a state senator. I had 3 jobs. I was working at Thomas College full-time, 80% of my time at Colby, and I was a state senator. I'm tried, I'm tan, rested, and ready, and I want to work for you.
Robert Wessels, bring us home.
All right, home stretch. Here we go, people. We need our next governor to be focused on education. We are failing our kids. We've homeschooled our 3 kids all the way through. They're 17, 19, and 21. That has been the best parenting decision that we've made, and we need to make it easy for the people of Maine to continue to do that. We need our next governor to be business focused. Again, we are failing businesses around the state. We are pushing them out of the state. as well as families, and we need somebody in the Blaine House who makes decisions that are business friendly. I am a Christian family man. We need somebody in the Blaine House with integrity and principles. They're seriously lacking right now.
Yeah.
I am a political outsider. This might be my greatest characteristic. We need a fresh perspective. We don't need somebody who's going to tweak. We need reform in Augusta. And I'm a team player. Again, I said it earlier, but it's really critical. We need the person who is running for governor to bring everybody else around from the state. That includes all of the Republicans, but that also includes the independents. Okay, we need to win the House. We need to win the Senate. If any one of us gets governor, but we don't have the House and Senate, we're not going where we need to go. And lastly, we need you. We need each one of you. There's hundreds of people here tonight. Thank you for showing up. It's exciting, it's energizing, but we need you to take that energy and to go out and to win elections. We need you to go to door. We need you to send texts, to do calls, to get your friends, your neighbors, people in church, family. We need you to motivate your circle of influence to win in November. Go to voterobertwessels.com to learn more. Thank you.
That will conclude tonight's Maine Republican gubernatorial debate, just a little over time, unless, Rick, do you want to tell the Janet Mills Joe Kane story? Oh, we'll save that for later. But please join me, everybody, in giving a round of applause to all of the candidates for coming out here tonight.
Nice job, Gage.